and welcome to this episode of John's Motorcycle Rescue and Review. Today I have two 1980 classic Japanese big bore cruisers. The first one up is Honda's CB900 Custom, and this was a cruiser that was kind of a parts bin cruiser. The motor was based on their CB900F Super Sport. It is a 16 valve inline 4-cylinder motor. The second bike up here is Yamaha's 1980 XS1100 Special, and this is Yamaha's answer to the big bore cruiser market. It was based on their standard model XS1100, which was really more of a touring bike or sport touring bike. Both of these bikes have large dual disc brakes up front. They both have big single piston calipers acting on those. I've upgraded the brakes on both of these bikes with EBC rotors and Spiegler brake lines. So the stopping power on both of these is actually really good, and it's much closer to modern standards than the way that they were set up from factory. Both of these bikes have big single disc brakes in the rear with single piston calipers. They both have shaft drive. The XS1100 has dual exhausts, and the CB900 Custom has quad exhausts on that, so that's kind of cool. I like that feature on the Honda. Both of these bikes have air assist front forks. They both have dual shocks in the rear, although the ones on the Honda are air assist and the ones on the Yamaha are the conventional units. Both of these bikes are 5-speed bikes, although the Honda has that dual range 5-speed, so it essentially gives it a 6th gear. Both of these bikes have very nice cruiser styling. They're simply styled. There's a lot of chrome mixed with shiny paint. I think they're both good looking bikes. The motor in the Yamaha XS1100 is a big air-cooled 4-cylinder. It is a 8-valve motor. It has 2 valves per cylinder, unlike the one in the Honda with the 16 valves and 4 valves per cylinder. All right, enough talk. What are these bikes like to ride and drive? What are they like out on the road? Well, I'm going to gear up. I'll bring my camera along. Let's find out together. Let's ride.
I am currently riding Honda's beautiful 1980 CB900 Custom. And man, if there was one word I would use to describe this bike, it is easy. Everything about it is easy. It shifts easily. It's very smooth. And it's got a very easygoing manner to it that just invites you to kind of tool along, enjoy the countryside. Perfectly comfortable going the speed limit, and it's just got a small, light, and low feel to it. It is not a heavy or intimidating bike from the saddle. I know the CB900 Custom is not a lightweight on the scales, but as soon as you're rolling, that weight just disappears. Of my classic cruisers, this Honda just manages to have such a feeling of a low center of gravity. It's so easy. It manages to be plush and well controlled at the same time. And it's kind of sneaky fast. It really inspires a lot of confidence in the corners. And you wouldn't think that from the long and low stance of it. But it really is a nice machine. Even though this motor is out of Honda's CB900F Super Sport bike, this motor feels perfectly at home in this setup as a cruiser. It really doesn't have a ton of power at any one spot, but it's got a very flat torque curve. The transmission is very easy. It never feels notchy, but it also doesn't have what I would call a positive gear engagement feel. So I'm never quite sure if it went all the way into gear. And I have to say, I'm going to give the nod in the braking department to this Honda. It's really nice in the way that it's set up. It has very good feel. And I'm just always pleasantly surprised when I ride this Honda how easy it is, how well controlled. For me, this Honda is a little bit cramped. I'm a tall guy. I'm 6'4", and so this Honda would definitely be probably the best choice out of the classic cruisers. As far as if you're a shorter rider or smaller rider, I think this bike would just fit you better. And the XS1100 and this Honda CB900 Custom just rival each other for smoothness. They have the two smoothest four-cylinder motors that I've ever driven in any motorcycle. Very nice. And the roll-on right there really highlights the difference between this Honda CB900 and the rest of my big bore cruisers. The Honda just has too much driveline drag. It's got the smallest motor in the group, and it doesn't make power where a normal cruiser would make it. It makes power way up high in the rev range, and so the roll-on in top gear from 40 to 80, I ran out of room before it got there. I am riding Yamaha's beautiful 1980 XS1100 Special, and I'm riding it back to back with Honda's CB900 Custom. And man, these bikes feel so different. And one of the first things you'll notice transitioning is, oh yeah, that motor. The XS1100 just makes awesome mid-range and low-end power, and it's just in a different world than the Honda. Both of these bikes are super smooth traveling down the road. The Honda definitely is a more compact bike. I'm a tall guy, and so this XS1100 actually fits me better. The seat on this bike is much more comfortable than the seat on the Honda. It's a seat that you can sit on for several hours and still be comfortable. It won't wear thin. This bike is actually revving a little bit higher than the Honda, although they're almost identical. At 55 miles an hour, this one's revving about 3,800 RPM. So it's geared even a little bit lower than the Honda is. But vibration-wise, they're almost equivalent to one another. Ride-wise, these both, if you're in a touring mode, they both ride very smoothly. They don't beat you up. But the center of gravity on this Yamaha seems to be about 2 feet higher than it is on the Honda. So where it feels like you sit down in the Honda, and it's got a very kind of long and low stance and a very low center of gravity, and it transitions very easily from side to side and handles nice on tight back roads. This bike is more comfortable on more open roads. And it's just a nice touring mount. It's one of those bikes that just, you get on it and it makes you want to go cross a couple of state lines or ride it up in the mountains and just enjoy the view. Instrumentation, both of these bikes are very, very similar. They both simply have a big tack and a big speedometer. When the XS1100 came out in 1978, it was the quickest bike in the world at that time. And this is a cruiser model, but the original was really designed as a touring bike. All of the big bore cruisers from Japan were based on their standard style machines very heavily. But this one definitely feels a lot like the touring model that it was based on. And as such, it's really the best touring bike of the big bore classic cruisers. Both of these bikes have upgraded brakes. They've got the EBC rotors and Spiegler brake lines. And they both have ultimate power, although the Honda just has better feel at the lever and it's easier to control. This bike likes to be shifted very precisely and with authority. You don't want to kind of be lazy with your shifting, otherwise it'll kind of grind or be notchy going into gear. I have changed the handlebar on this Yamaha and it gives me a little bit of a lean into the wind, and for me that makes it better at speeds, you know, at 55 miles an hour or above. This bike has the advantage now. I think the Honda would be a little bit more comfortable at speed if I put a little bit lower bar on it, but it's the only one of my classic cruisers that I haven't changed the handlebar on. And the reason being, the handlebar layout on that is actually still pretty decent. It's fairly wide and gives good control, so I didn't really need to change it. I needed to change it on this bike. My hands were in my lap with the buckhorn bars, and that doesn't suit me. And on these big bore bikes, for me, it is all about that mid-range, that usable real-world power. You don't have to rev them to the moon at 4,000 RPM. If you want to pass, you just tag it. And it just sweeps. That speedometer just wraps right around. And I think for me, that's really the one area where that Honda is just, it's lacking. The XS1100 is very stable at speeds like this, and it'll do it all day long. Very nice.
Man, what a lot of fun. That was so interesting to compare these back to back, to ride them back to back, and to really experience the different character that each bike has. This Honda is a physically smaller bike. It has a lower seat height. It has a more compact seating position, and it really does feel smaller on the road. And for shorter riders, that's definitely going to be a factor. And this is going to be a non-intimidating place to ride. It's very easy in the corners. It transitions very nicely. It's confidence inspiring, and it's easy going. It's not a bike that's going to get out and intimidate you. It's just super smooth, super refined. The interesting thing is that motor that's in it, it's kind of like the motor and the transmission. They work together fine if you're in cruising mode. It has smooth power. It has adequate power down low from as low as 2,000 RPM, but it never has the mid-range of the other big bore classic cruisers. And so if you're riding too up, if you would be riding in the mountains, you're going to need to downshift several times and kind of keep this closer to the power band. However, when you run this bike in the power band and higher up in the rev range, it feels more like a sport bike. As such, I would appreciate a really crisp shifting transmission that made it easy to stay up in that rev range. But this has a lot of driveline lash. The transmission itself is very buttery. It's very smooth. It's never notchy, but it's a long throw. And when you really push the motor up into the higher RPM, the bike says, hey, I'm not real comfortable with this. Let's take it easy. And that really hampers the Honda, which is so good in the corners and so well planted and everything. It really does kind of hamper that, and it makes you kind of go back to more of a cruising pace and a smooth pace and lower in the rev range and just like, let's take it easy, let's go cruising, but let's not get too carried away here. And that brings us to the Yamaha. Man, that motor is awesome. It's so smooth, it's so willing, it has such nice mid-range. And the crispness of the shifting on the Yamaha, it has a shorter throw. It does like direct shifts. You can definitely feel kind of a notchiness in the gear train as you're going up and down through the gears, especially if you don't match your revs exactly right. And they're known for second gear issues, so if you have one, I would say, just keep that in mind. Don't be, blitzing through the gears all the time and just hammer in second gear. Otherwise, you may end up with some issues. This bike does not do that. I don't want it to develop that problem, so I'm going to treat it nice. As a taller guy, the Yamaha definitely fits me better with this little bit lower bar that I put on. I have a little bit more lean into the wind at higher speeds. And so for me, the Yamaha is just at its best when it's on a little bit more open roads. Kind of winding roads is fine as long as it doesn't get too twisty and too technical. This bike just eats that up. It's a great place to spend a day and to rack up some miles. The seat on the Yamaha is much more comfortable for me than the Honda is. And again, it's just roomier. But it definitely feels bigger. This is more of an experienced rider's bike and more of a taller rider's bike. It's a little bit more top heavy, and it's not as intuitive or confidence inspiring as the low Honda is to ride. Both of these bikes were really fun projects to work on. I bought them both as non-runners and have gone through the process of upgrading them and getting them back on the road and really making sure that they're 100% and ready to rock. And I would not hesitate to ride either of these bikes anywhere in the country. They're both really nice and reliable at this point. If I had to pick one to ride on a daily basis, I would probably go with the Yamaha, surprisingly to me. I really enjoy the eagerness of the motor, the smoothness. I love the ergonomics on this bike. That comfortable seat and the comfortable ergonomics make it a bike that I just want to get on and go out and put a lot of miles on and just enjoy it. And it really carries that flavor of the original, more touring model in its DNA, and I think Yamaha did a really good job with that. The Honda to me is a little bit conflicted. I honestly think it would have been a more entertaining bike if it would have had a chain drive and a 6-speed transmission. I still think the Honda is a fantastic bike, and I honestly wish that this XS1100 combines some of that ease of use and intuitiveness in its low-speed handling. All right, I'd love to know what you guys think. If any of you have owned the Yamaha XS1100 before or Honda's CB900 Custom, please feel free to comment in the comment section below. As always, I hope you found this video entertaining and informative, and until next time, enjoy the ride.